know everybody I go like we.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back from lunch. As people flow up the stairs and walk, we'll get going. This panel's gonna be lit. Welcome back from lunch and recap highlights and from the affirmation wall. I wonder if this can go all the way over there. Let's see. Everybody kind of shout out, how are you feeling about the conference right now? Anybody? Okay, literal shouts, but say something. Give me oh, the affirmation wall is dope. Oh, this. What are we doing? Nothing? Okay. Yes, it is. So over here on the affirmation wall, we have things like keep going, dream, scared. Ooh, that's a good one. We can do it all. Another keep going, please your younger self with thank you. These are perfect your peace. You can do it. Fight. Joy is a birthright. There's some beautiful affirmations going on that wall. Y'all make sure you add to it and take one if you need one, because that's what they're there for. Okay, so coming up here on our main stage is boundaries in the workplace. Yes, I'm so excited about this panel. It's moderated by one of our ambassadors that travels with us to wellness conferences where Melanin Minds does all the wellness stuff at different conferences. So we have that. Breakout room 1 is interpersonal skills for professionals, for successful professionals. And then breakout room 2 downstairs right below us is caring through mental health crises, and it's a workshop as well. And then in the small breakout room, it's discovering your leadership. So now I get the opportunity to introduce the moderator of this panel. Kamilah Thomas. She is an all-star ambassador of Melanin Minds and is a licensed psychotherapist, clinical supervisor, and private practice coach and entrepreneur with over 15 years of direct care and management experience. Whew. Okay. She is currently the CEO and clinical director of KBT Counseling and Consulting, PLLC, a group practice right here in Houston, Texas. She's amazing, and this panel is going to be amazing because when we're talking about professional and the things that you need to move forward as a professional, and sometimes I think as business owners and entrepreneurs, sometimes we're like, oh, well, we're not in the professional world, but there's a lot that goes into it too. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand this over so Kamilah can get this panel started.
Hey, y'all. Hey. We have been doing COVID souvenirs, so I'm going to put this little shower cap on this microphone. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Did you all enjoy lunch? Yes, I had chopping block. It was very good. Yes, everybody has some chopping block. All righty. So we're going to get to it. I am really, really excited to be here today for day 1 of the Melanin Minds Mental Health Conference. As Legina stated, I am a very, very proud ambassador of Melanin Minds. I love being a psychotherapist and really helping people become their best selves, to discover all of the things that may have been holding them back and giving them life and purpose to be able to move forward. So I am excited to be joined by these other lovely ladies that I've had the pleasure to meet over the last couple weeks as we're getting ready to talk about boundaries in the workplace. I know that, actually, you know what? I'm going to allow these other ladies to introduce themselves. And Miss Joye, I'm going to start with you.
Hello. Oh, hey. Good afternoon. My name is Joy Jackson, and I am the founder and owner of Speaking of Joy. And Speaking of Joy was created for women like you and I. The goal is to encourage you to unleash the power within and walk in your God-given purpose. So I was an executive 3 years ago, and so after being let go, my husband encouraged me to do the work for myself. So I've got 20 years experience in training and development, former executive, and then I decided to trust myself. And so I started working for myself, and here we are 3 years later doing this work. And I do strategic planning for women entrepreneurs. So if you're a woman entrepreneur and you want to walk in purpose in your profession, then we work together. And then for other women who are stuck or just trying to figure it out, or like, I'm full but not fulfilled, then I'm the person that works with you. So I'm excited to be here.
Oh, hi. So I'm Kameco de los Santos. I am speaking on a panel on Sunday in which kind of I work with advocating for your child, my child, special needs, and kind of passing on those resources and how you might advocate for your child, especially through the education system. So that kind of helping in the mental health kind of space. I currently work in a different space where I am in a hub of resources and help to kind of share those throughout. So that's kind of what I do. This is my first year here speaking, and so thank you, and thank you for grace. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello, I'm DJ Manning. I am actually a former Texas Workforce Commission employee. Worked a lot with unemployment and DEI in the workplace. I mainly work now for Melanated Vines, which is my own company, and I focused on bringing Black-owned wine brands and spirits to social events. So a lot of brands are more non-melanated, and I make sure that Black-owned brands get the attention they need when I host events, and I cater to the Black-owned wine space. I do DEI as well as resume building, workplace, environment safety for people of color. And now I'm just, like I said, focusing on my wine business, and I speak at lots of different events, and I'm thankful they invited me out to this because I met them at a different event and now I'm here. So I hope that y'all learned something. If y'all have questions, please feel free to ask. We are here as a resource, and we want y'all to use that resource to your advantage.
All right, let's get to it. So, boundaries. I know that you all have been hearing about them because I've been popping in and out in some of the other workshops, but I want to make sure that we're actually defining what boundaries are so we're clear about that. I'm going to ask the other ladies, but one way that I define boundaries is it's an invisible line, limits or rules to protect ourselves and other people. Right? Boundaries can show up professionally, socially, in the workplace, in all areas of our lives, and whether we have them or we don't, right, it's gonna have a huge, huge impact. So, ladies, how do you all define boundaries, and one way that it's important to make sure that we have in our life?
I'll go first. So I define boundaries pretty similar as Kamilah. I do believe that they are invisible lines, or they are lines that we establish in order to protect ourselves or protect other people in the same manner. I also think boundaries are key in us identifying who we are and what we stand for and what we believe. A lot of times we look at boundaries as keeping people out and don't cross this space, but in actuality, it's also who am I and what do I value? What's important to me? So boundaries are also that. So one of the reasons they're important is because if you don't have boundaries, then you find yourself in compromising situations and compromising relationships, falling for anything. So boundaries are the guard by which you live your life. They're the guard by which you establish who you are and how you show up in the world.
Now, one of the things Ms. George just said was that we have to know who we are and what our boundaries are to then be able to communicate them and enforce them with other people, right? Sometimes we get mad that people are crossing our boundaries, but we haven't established any. How do you all define boundaries?
My definition is how I prefer for anybody to engage with me, period, in any kind of space. I feel like that's important because it allows me to, or it gives that kind of, that line and how I expect them to treat me. And so that's kind of my definition.
For me, boundaries are my safe place. They're my bubble. They're my comfort zone. That's how I define boundaries. You don't let everyone in your bubble. You don't let everyone in your comfort zone. You're comfortable. You can verbalize. You can communicate needs, wants, trust, distrust in your bubble comfortably. If you're outside of that bubble, you don't necessarily not know how, but you may not feel comfortable to say you don't like something, you don't want something, and so on. So for me, that bubble, that safe place, is my boundaries. And once I step outside of that safe place, then it becomes uncomfortable, or that's that unknown part of the ocean that we don't know how far deep it goes, right? And it's very important to establish those so that you can be more effective, so that you can be more comfortable with yourself, in your group, in your place of employment, or even at school. You have to be able to establish those and know when it's okay to let you build trust with someone, but they might get a little bit, they might not be able to live in your bubble, but they can step in and out from time to time.
So I think it's fair that boundaries teach other people how to treat us, right? And it's about the behaviors that we're willing to accept and not accept. But here's the thing, we also need personal boundaries, right? So let's talk about that, because I think as well accomplished as everyone is and how we help other people, sometimes, we can fall victim to not always establishing those boundaries for ourselves. So let's talk about that for a moment. I will just share and just say, as an entrepreneur, I had to learn what a different set of boundaries look like. Because when I was working for a 9-to-5, they kind of told me when I'm supposed to be at work, how many clients I'm going to see, right? And so as an entrepreneur, I have full autonomy over my time and how I choose to spend that. And so I would say probably the first 2 years in private practice, really having to figure out what those boundaries are. And so it went from how many clients I can, really handle a day, right, to protect my own mental, making sure that there was a hard cutoff time so I wasn't just working to all areas of the night, because there's nobody to tell me that work is over, right? As an entrepreneur, there's always something that we have to do. And I think in times where I was still trying to figure out what those boundaries were, I can say that I noticed more stress, kind of more irritability, just feeling like I was stretched so thin. And so in year 5, I'm very, very firm with what my boundaries are for myself, so I can make sure that I'm showing up as my best to be able to serve everybody else. So ladies, can you all think about a time where your boundaries might have been a little poor, we're still working on them, and how you noticed that it negatively impacted you?
I'm going to reference back to a panel earlier. We have, I noticed that many years ago that I had financial boundaries that weren't there, because I'm only buying this. It's not that big of a deal. But then you want the freedom to travel. You want the freedom to enjoy. So do you want your pizza tonight because you're too lazy to cook, or do you want to go on that vacation and hop on a plane in 2 months from now? So for me, financial boundaries is a really big one that we need to apply to everyday life, because whether you're saving up in case your car breaks down or in case there's a layoff, COVID taught us that for those who didn't have financial boundaries, you were stuck in a really hard spot, taking care of all your needs and necessities. So for me, having financial boundaries that weren't so well prior to COVID, when COVID kicked in, I was on top of it. I learned how to keep myself in check and how to maintain, because not just for myself, but for my family and friends, and how to help advocate for them and how to assist them in those aspects as well. So financial boundaries is a real big one that I feel that I had issues with initially, but COVID kind of gave us a run for our money and taught me, okay, you don't have tomorrow to fix it. You need to apply it now.
So for me, just kidding. Hello? Okay. So for me, I struggled a long time with, I guess, I don't know how many, struggled with kind of identity and my cultural boundaries. And I started to set them, but it wasn't a whole work setting. And so little by little I was setting them, but by the time it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't like to be called that, I allowed them to call me that so many times. And so, like, my name is Kameco, but they started to call me Cami. And I was like, that's not my name. But I couldn't get to that point yet because that's a part of my identity and my culture, and that's my name. But it was Cam all of a sudden. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling uneasy, but I'm trying to make them feel comfortable. But I was still struggling with that. And when it got to, I was ready to kind of stand in that, that was the point where when I spoke up, it was kind of this backlash. And I feel like, okay, I can't do that again. Like, I can't allow it to be hot potato with, you can't call me it, but you maybe can. I really need to identify that and that cultural boundary for me.
Okay, and so for me, I think the biggest boundary that I'm trying to establish now as an entrepreneur, year 3, is really with my clients and being clear about who I serve. Because if you're an entrepreneur, especially as a coach, let's be honest, there's coaches all over this world, right? Okay, everybody a coach, including me. Okay, I drank the Kool-Aid too. But the thing about it is I had to be clear with who I was and who I served. So when I first started, I did leadership training and I did leadership coaching. I ain't like those people. And not that I didn't like them, they just weren't my people. Like, I realized that my heart and my passion and my calling was to women who really want to walk in purpose. So I could walk in a room, talk to everybody, but it was 1 or 2 women that stood out to me. But I allowed my business, for fear of not making money, for all of those things. So I compromised. And so a lot of times when we talk about boundaries, we don't talk about compromising. That's a part of when you don't have clear boundaries, you compromise. So I look up, I'm making good money, but I'm unhappy. So I'm like, why am I an entrepreneur and I'm still miserable? I'm still working all these crazy hours. So I had to be clear who my client was. My client looked like me. My client was a woman of purpose. And so when I really got clear on that, I felt good with saying no. So I was able to say, oh, no, thank you, but. Or I was able to say, you know what, I'm not the right person for you. Here's someone else. So my boundaries came when I realized who I was really called to serve.
Can I touch on that? So I feel like a lot of our boundaries in general come from being Black women in non-Black spaces. Is that a common, because we take the time, I think, to appreciate each other's difference in names, for example. And we respect that, and then we learn how to say, okay, girl, let me get that correct. You know, we show each other that respect immediately. And then we know how it is to be busy moms or auntie to everybody in the neighborhood. So we're considerate of time. Like, oh, I'm sorry if we're running late. You know, we're really, and is it just me that thinks it's a cultural thing, that we're more aware and conscious of boundaries?
Well, I think boundaries are worldly, right? And so boundaries can be physical, they can be sexual boundaries, there's intellectual boundaries, there are emotional boundaries, there's time boundaries, and they are financial boundaries, right? So I think that they can be flexible, and there are times where people have stronger boundaries in one area, but maybe not so much in another, right? So sometimes people can have really good boundaries, and they're very assertive in the workplace. But when it comes to their personal life, that's when they're finding it may be a little bit more difficult. And so I think we can talk about that. One of the things that I think has been pretty clear since the pandemic, it really caused a lot of people to take a look at what their values were and what was really important to them, right? And a lot of that showed up in the workplace. We were like, we're not sitting in traffic, driving an hour one way. Like, I'm not just gonna do things to be unhappy just because I'm making money. And so I think it's really important to talk about the lack of boundaries sometimes that can show up in the workplace and how that creates to toxic work environments. So can I get a raise of hand of anyone who has ever worked in a toxic work environment? Almost everybody in this room, and way over here, and the timekeeper. Okay, gotcha, okay. So can I hear from the audience one way that you know that there was a lack of boundary that was contributing to the toxicity in your workplace? You can just shout it out. We family. Come on in. And that's it. How many of you all had times where you may have felt like your supervisor, director, whoever you reported to was maybe calling you, emailing you outside of work hours? And you felt that that was encroaching on your own personal time? Yes? Okay. What about, maybe there's inconsistency in what rules are. Some people can get away with certain things and other people, it's a problem. Yep, okay, so we're experiencing some of that.
I'm going to go directly to saying that when I worked for the state of Texas, just me, not anybody else who worked for the state, just me, I'm going to speak for me, is for me, it was like, if I was like, no, I don't want to volunteer on Saturday. Oh, well, the rest of the team is volunteering. Congratulations to the rest of the team. Like, but if you don't do the other extra stuff outside of those time boundaries that they set up when they hire you, then it becomes a problem. So then you start wiggling and walking that fine line of what you call a boundary. So once you start crossing that boundary, they say, oh, well, she's fine doing that because you've worked Saturday before. You volunteered at this other event. Why is it a problem now? And I feel like it's harder sometimes, especially if you're a mom, or if you have children, to set those boundaries and stick to them because you don't want to be labeled as a problem or not a team player.
And can I say this? My husband works from home too. We're at home together. We still together. But oh, child, that's another conversation. Have that in Melanin Minds next year, right? Okay. But here's the thing. He used to travel in. It took an hour to get to work. And now he's compromising that hour by sitting at the computer. So I'm finding he's not taking lunch. He's working through. So there is a lack of trust that COVID brought about. So you can't be at home and wash without that green bubble. Now they got the stuff on Amazon that's shaking your mouse because there's a lack of trust in the employee-employer. Y'all didn't know that? The employee-employer relationship. I don't know you're working. I don't know you're working. And so I think we've been conditioned now to even loosen our boundaries because I tell my husband all the time, no, you get a lunch break. You don't have to sit at your computer. Well, I got this meeting, and his team is in California, and so I'm like, well, they're putting meetings at what's 10 their time, what's 12 your time. So when do you get to eat? And we have just been conditioned now. It's a new set of things that we have to come up with. So now it's, okay, well, I got to be at the computer. I got to be on green. They got to see that I'm working. When in actuality, you had an hour commute, and nobody called you on that hour commute. Or when you went to HEB across the street for lunch, or you went to the gym, nobody called you. So we have allowed COVID and the changes in our work environment to cause us to change our boundaries. So I think if some of us think about it, we've given our employers more access because every time they look for us, we're answering. Or every time we miss a call, we're apologizing. How many of us find ourselves doing that? When they call, you're like, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't answer. What do you mean? You went to the bathroom. And I used to sit in people's offices all day at work. And nobody was looking for me. But now suddenly here you go looking for, So we have to be mindful of how we're giving people access and allowing them to treat us a certain way because an environment around us has changed instead of saying, no, I still have the right. And now I just happen to be able to put some clothes in the washing machine while I do it I have the ability to do that. But it doesn't mean I'm not productive. But a lot of times now trust has gone out the window. So if you don't see me, I'm not productive. And that's a boundary we have to go back and set. No, I get to eat lunch. I get to take 15-minute breaks. Like, I get to do those things. And you can't be asking where I've been for 3 minutes.
I don't know. For me, that's a tough one because we don't have to jiggle the mouse as much. But I mean, we've had to fill out, forms of what we're doing with our time. So then that boundary of what if that's kind of off, or what if the internet flickered out and I didn't do that for that time period, and it brought about this anxiety that it was just like, I'm breaking all the boundaries because I need to keep my job and feed, my kids. So, yeah, COVID brought about a lot of insane things on both ends where you even start to distrust yourself. Like, wait, did I do that thing I told them I was going to do at 3:59? Oh my God. So definitely now getting out of it and resetting, making sure you are seated in what you are and what you know your boundaries to be, and even figure out maybe you have some new boundaries. Maybe it's time to push back a little bit more, because COVID has also brought about a lot of options. And do go work for yourself or work virtually for somebody in California. They don't care if your mouth's shut.
Not my husband's company.
No, they do. So let's talk about what some boundaries in the workplace are. Joy already talked about making sure that you are still taking a lunch break. And that does not mean eating while you're still working, right? That literally means a break. How many of y'all actually take a lunch break? Oh, okay.
I'm not.
Audience, what's the reason why we are not taking our lunch breaks that your employers legally have to give you?
Legally have to give you a lunch break.
Why aren't we taking our lunch breaks? So I don't think that the law said you only eat when you're hungry. I don't think that's the definition of taking a lunch break. It's a break. It's a mental break, right, from that work day. So whether you choose to take a nap, if that's when you choose to throw those clothes in the washing machine, take a walk, whatever that looks like, it is a break from work. Because literally our brain needs to be able to have a break, right? So if we're not taking lunch breaks, that's one tip that you can do moving into this next week. How many of you all are taking PTO? Okay, now y'all hands
look at
went
that.
up. Okay, so we're not going to eat, but we're going to go on vacation. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Think about how many people don't use their PTO. And they brag about it. I got all this PTO stacked up. Unless you are planning on quitting anytime soon and you planning on cashing out, that's not a flex. It's not a flex.
And can I say, you better hope that your job will pay you out for it.
Exactly.
Because you think you coming up, and what'll happen is you'll only get 40 hours, and you got 240.
And their answer is, well, why didn't you take it when you had it? That's
It
the
is
answer.
literally paid time off.
Yes.
So if we think about the reasons why sometimes we don't take care of ourselves, why there have been 2 people I met today is just like, you know what, I had a loss in my family. Why are you here? Go handle what you need to, right? So it's literally paid time off. A lot of times people don't take it because I want to take the time off, but I'm worried about not getting paid, right? Yeah. They're paying you for the time. And so not taking your PTO is a way that you may be having poor workplace boundaries, right? Because you're not creating that limit for yourself.
I think sometimes we are so consumed with what's going to happen if we're not there. Yeah. Let me tell you, fall out, pass out. They're going to figure it out. And so instead of saying, oh my gosh, I can't, if I leave right now, because I guarantee the bosses baby, they are out. They are having a good, funky good time in Tahiti while you are stressed and taking over the job. You can prepare as much as you can prepare for it, and then you need to be off. And then when you're off, be off. Man, how many of us are still taking phone calls and we're on vacation? And we put that little out of office on, and them people do not care. They don't respect it. I tell all my clients, if you go on vacation, when you come back, read the last 2 days of emails. If you've been gone for a week, they should have had all that worked out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, you just catch it up to see if anybody got fired or hired so that you know what you're walking into on Monday. But we don't do that. So that's the thing. We've bound ourselves. We've chained ourselves to thinking if I don't finish this, or if this doesn't happen before I leave, even on a Friday. Some of us are spending way too much time on Friday because, oh my God, this has to be due by Monday, and if I don't finish it, what's going to happen? Listen, life's going to go on. And if they think you didn't complete it, you can show what you've done. It's further than you were when you started. Take your time, enjoy your weekend, and see them on Monday morning or Tuesday, depending on how you feel.
And if you don't believe it, COVID has taught us that is true. We had people not make it back to work and not make it back to their families. The work still got done. The money is still there for employees. And they might have switched out employees, but there's still money for employees, for people to work. There's still jobs available. And even though the boundaries or the accessible boundaries have changed, you can take small steps to implementing healthy boundaries to where your time is still your time. Set an alarm clock on your phone. So you can say, I take my nap 5 minutes after my lunch starts, and I want to wake up 10 minutes before my lunch is over. Well, my lunch is only 30 minutes. Sit there with your eyes closed, away from the computer, answer a call, play, what is it? Fruit Slicer, Fruit Ninja on your phone, whatever.
Candy Crush.
Candy Crush. Play something. Get yourself, even with your children. Well, they just got home from school and no, they don't. You send them to their room, say, sit down, be quiet, give me 5 minutes. Those are boundaries. It's okay to set boundaries even with your children in your home. Why you, what's the thing? Oh, well, they just got home. Teach your children how when they come home, they know they leaving you alone. You're going to go to the bathroom for 5 minutes while they unload their backpack, while they change into after-school clothes, while they write down what kind of snack they want. Something as simple as that is giving yourself a time boundary between running errands, picking up kids, and getting home and setting up for the evening.
And I would definitely say whether you're a business owner or running your house, because moms do that, think about that example we're setting for boundaries. So if you're a business owner and you have employees and you're setting non-boundaries, then you're also setting them up to be in a dangerous situation where they set up non-boundaries. And when you do, maybe they can't. And then they're in a dangerous place maybe with their health, and then you're wondering what's going on with them, but they were following you. And your children, the same thing. So make sure you give that decompressed time, because if they see, because we know, those machines, you know how we roll, but if they constantly see mom is never taking a break, then they also think this is the way to go, and this is the way to get it, and this is, make sure, just 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't play Candy Crush, but I will look at a wall. But I just need a minute because a mom needs to get some words that are nice to say to you. And just give me a minute to regroup and then come back. And it's the same kind of in your workplace, those boundaries. You need 5 minutes to get some words to say to whomever you need to speak to. Give yourself a break and create that space to make those boundaries and make it safe.
How many of you all have a hard time saying no? How many of you all have had to say no to your manager or whoever you report to? Did that feel good?
Are they going to be upset because I said no?
So part of boundaries is also being able to say no and also be able to receive and accept someone else's no, right? And in the workplace, it can be very hard because I think most of us are afraid of retaliation, right? I don't want to say no to this extra project. I don't want to say no to having to come in and work on a Saturday. I don't want to have to say no to whatever this new change in policy is, right? And so it can be very scary. I personally, years ago, when I worked for a government agency in another state, I had one of my clients make a disclosure of someone in a leadership position sexually abusing her and another child. And my duty was to report that, right? Part of my report, I needed to tell my director. And because of who this person was that she was disclosing, she was like, no, we can't make this report. Like, are you sure your kid wasn't lying? And I had to look her dead in the face and said, I am still making this report. These are the things that she told me, and it's my duty to report, right? And so I just have very strong boundaries. But, you know, in another space or for someone else, that was the chief over our entire district that I had to say, you're not going to tell me to be quiet and silence what this girl is saying, right? And so long story short, a whole investigation happened, and her disclosure was accurate. He got fired because he was abusing, you know, two other girls. So I think it's really important to understand some of the concerns and the barriers that get in the way of us sometimes being able to establish those workplace boundaries, even if it's to take that PTO, right? Because I've heard people to say, I'm tired, I'm burned out, but if I'm gone, what's gonna happen with the team, right? Or their mind is so consumed with work that they can't even relax and enjoy the time off that they've had. So ladies, let's talk about what are some other barriers, things that might make it difficult for us to be able to establish some workplace boundaries.
Self-expectations.
I was going to say double-mindedness. Because we
Say more about that.
Oh, listen, the Bible says a double-minded man is not sane in all his ways. And so a lot of times we say one thing and then we do something else. So I'll say no, but then I'll compromise. So now I've told the person who I've tried to set the boundary with that, I mean, let's be honest. All of us been in a relationship that shouldn't have worked. Let's take it out the workplace. Let's take it to the home place. Okay, you said you weren't going to take it. You said you weren't going to allow it. But then they came back with flowers and all the apologies, and you took it. And it wasn't until Keisha Cole started playing all that, you start throwing stuff out the house. But the fact is, we are double-minded. And if we don't stand firm on our boundary, what happens is we teach people that they can push our boundary. And if they push hard enough, if they guilt us hard enough, if they apologize enough, that we're going to say, okay. And so we're double-minded. So we're like, oh, no, you can't do that to me. But then you can't work. I don't work on Saturdays. Well, okay, I'll do it this once. Well, right then I have now compromised everything that I stood for. So now I've told you it's okay, because if you push, if you guilt, if our kids do it to us. Get in the store, no, you can't have that. Then all of a sudden, well, and so if we're not truly firm on what we believe and what we say is a no, then we're going to easily be swayed. And the minute you're swayed, you've lost the fight.
What makes it hard to establish workplace boundaries?
Self-expectations. Having expectations of what you're supposed to look like at work. You cross your own boundaries because, well, I've been here for 2 years, so I should have had this by now. So, I still don't want to work Sundays because I have church with family, but I might not be where I'm at because I haven't accommodated them. So now I'm on Sundays. Well, another 2 year past, I've been doing Sundays. Well, now I'm doing Sundays, Saturdays, and evenings. When I say I can't do evenings, because I have to be, you have expectations for yourself and where you're supposed to be and how long you're supposed to climb whatever the ladder is. And you break your own boundaries because you have expectations of where you should be or what you should be doing. Or even as an entrepreneur, you don't do certain type of events you don't cater to a certain demographic. But because you don't want to miss that money, you cross and you accommodate. You don't want to look as if you're like, oh, I want to look inclusive. Like I want to focus on women's health, but I don't want the men who are paying big money to say I'm a feminist or I'm only focused. I feel I should be further. So now you're catering to men and women, and you're like, okay, do I need to change my boundaries of how my access to me? You start compromising so many different things when you have expectations of where you are compared to where you thought you would be, whether in a corporate world or as an entrepreneur.
That was enough. Right there.
So let's talk about professional self-care. How many of y'all do well with self-care? Well, you know what? I'm so glad to see so many more hands raised. Miss Katie, what is one way that you engage in professional self-care? Okay. Keep learning. What about anybody else? What are ways that you make sure that you're taking care of yourself professionally? Yes.
Write it out on the order. I believe in letting things flow, letting things out of your mind, journaling, writing, getting stuff out. You know, if you have any kind of artistry, you have to live in what you believe in.
Anyone else? Yes.
Mine is easy, self-maintenance. Like getting your hair done, your nails done, your eyebrows done. That is like, you know how when guys get their haircuts and they feel like they're like the hottest thing? I feel like with us, it's like the lashes, the hair, the nails, like we feel like
Okay. Armani?
So professionally, I've recently started that if I feel like I need time off, even if it's short notice, I used to feel really bad about, dang, it's only 24 hours in this work. I'm feeling sick. I don't want to go to these clients later on. No matter what, I take that time for myself. So that's professional self-care.
Prior to COVID, which I'm like, I need to get back to, I made a commitment to myself to make sure I scheduled quarterly trips. Whether that was just going to Austin, if I'm going to go to Dubai, but quarterly trips, because travel for me is my number one way of self-care, right? It allows me to physically, emotionally just kind of disconnect, put myself in a new environment, learn new things, create new memories, meet new people, to really be able to like just come back fresh. So, I don't care where it is. I'll go ahead and block off whether it's a long weekend, a week, whatever it looks like, because I know me. As long as there's open space on my calendar, I'm going to find something to fill it with, right? Because again, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, there's always something that needs to be done. And so by prioritizing my time with just blocking that time off, it made travel important, right? So everything else is still going to get done, but it's going to be around the time that I need for myself.
And can I say this? I'm going to be a rebel in this whole self-care movement. I believe self-care is going to go away just like DE&I, just like everything else. It's a fad. So it's really more of a commitment to yourself to prioritize yourself. Right now it's hashtag self-care, self-care. We should have been self-caring. Nobody should have to tell you that you deserve time, that you deserve to look good, that you deserve to travel, that you deserve to write, that you deserve to read. We've made it a movement, and now and so just like any other movement, it's going to go out. So you've got to commit. It's not about a self-care, it's about a commitment to say, I value me enough to prioritize things that I like to do. Whether it's get my nails done, whether it's go to Dubai, whether it's stare at a wall, whether it's promote black brands, whether it's keeping time, whether it's starting Melanin minds. I mean, seriously, we have made it this big thing when all we should have been doing was taking care of ourselves. I mean, in the first place. So get rid of the self-care. To me, this is what I tell them. Get rid of this, because for me, when I say self-care, now it's pressure. Lord, I got to figure out what I'm going to do for self-care. So now I'm stressed about self-care. Yeah, I mean, because now I'm like, oh my God, I want to plan a trip. Oh my God, I got to think about all these things. I got to think about the kid. No. You know what, Joy? Today, I'm going for a walk. That's self-care. I ain't got a hashtag and I ain't got to tag nobody. I ain't got to call it self-care. Today, I went for a walk. That's what I did for myself. Today I did this. So I give myself little moments every day of victories. Now I look forward to the big stuff, but I don't even call that self-care. I'm going on a trip. Listen, you can call it what you want. I'm going on a trip. So I think we just have to be mindful, because it's going to be so easy for us to fall into a fad that's going to go away. All of these things that we've been building up, they go, I mean, I trained DE&I, and I'm like, Lord, 2 years ago, everybody was promoted to a D&I professional. Everybody had a job. Now they firing D&I people left and right. You know why? Because it's not a movement anymore. It's not needed. Self-care has always been needed. We've just never prioritized it. So now it's about prioritizing.
But it's mental health.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing, like those boundaries, the self-care. It's okay to say self-care. It's not okay to say mental health. Yeah, we're not. It's okay to say, I need some self-care. I'm going to use some PTO. But you tell your employer you need a mental health day, which you in my inbox means my mental health is not well. Yeah. You texting me at 5:01 means my mental health is at risk. You suggesting I volunteer during my vacation time is affecting my mental health. Anything that's outside of work hours, if you choose to do it, your mental health isn't affected by it, because you're doing something yourself has decided for yourself. But when employers impose things, when friends and colleagues impose things, when children impose things, when school districts impose things, your mental health is at risk, because that's not something that you want to do. That's not something aligned with your own schedule. Now you're trying to see, is it not self-care to go to my kid's game, or is it okay if I schedule it? But how do I handle all these extra things that are a part of me, but not who I am? So the self-care is the acceptable term. It's self-care for myself, and if my children are well, then I'm well. If my finances are well, then I'm well. And then, but if we say mental health, it's a bad thing. But mental health is all of it together, because if everything is well, then your mental health can be together. But taking that PTO for mental health, it adds more anxiety.
I'm going to say something different. We need to take care of our mental health because we can't control external factors. So if we're depending on external factors and everything else to be okay, in order for us to be okay, we ain't never going to be right, okay? So peace is being able, how can I be centered? How can I be grounded? How can I just say all is well, even in the midst of chaos, right? Does somebody have a hand? Nope. Kameco?
No, I was just going to say, along the lines of that, I know, especially at my unnamed employer, if someone is asking for a mental health day or, these mental health, week, whatever, then they're sending the talk about FMLA, and then somehow their paperwork gets lost, and we just cannot honor it at this time. But if they take some self-care days or some paid time off, like, it really does destigmatize a little bit what we shouldn't have to destigmatize.
And that's what I was going to say. I think there is a shift that we need to have in being proud of saying mental health. Like, we have made it a negative thing. And like my therapist says, she said, if you can have cancer, you can have all, and you'll go into work and tell everybody, you're sick, you got breast. And she was saying, she said, but as a culture, especially, we don't do that and say, look at my beautiful brain because I'm getting therapy. So we've made, now let's be honest, there are cultures who've been doing therapy forever. And they will tell you about it. They'll tell you about their medication. They'll tell you about, but then when it comes to us, we feel ashamed to say, no, I'm getting help. And I'm getting help because I want to be my best self, because I don't want to have to rely on my PTO or this vacation to revive me. Because how many of us know the minute we go on vacation, if we ain't well when we went, when we come back, it's the same mess we just left. And we're wondering why we're still upset. You done spent all this money in Bali or Dubai or Austin or Galveston or downtown.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm on peace with my
at the Marriott,
money.
but at Marriott Marquis, you down there on the lazy river, still troubled by the things in your head. And so we have to get to a point where we can say mental health and not apologize for it, because it's not a negative thing. It's really who I am. Part of me is mental.
Yeah. Legina?
Yeah, so when I'm thinking about all this, because, we started Melanin Minds to, destigmatize the fact that we don't do this work already. So I'm always really leery when we do a lot of we say our culture, because that's my mom behind me, and mental health has been in our world forever. I have chosen or did not understand how important it was, even starting a mental health organization. Last year, the conversation was legitimate to have a therapist. Gave myself 1 year, I have a therapist now. And so even a conference like this will look around, mental health is being done, right?
Yeah.
And we are talking about it, and it's destigmatized. So even sometimes in our conversations that are at a higher level, us still holding on to the generational, we are doing it. Like, I don't know a black man in my life, not one, that is not in therapy or understanding, his wellness and stuff. Like, my homie Steven, I don't know if y'all remember him from last year from the conference that took all the photos and stuff. Like, I remember one day he's like, yeah, I need my therapist. I was like, bro, what you talking about getting therapist? Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go get coffee, But I found my therapist, you know what I mean? So, the normalization of the things we're doing is here, right? And bringing that conversation from the past, which is really easy to just black women are holding it down for everybody else. I know a lot of black women that are like, I'm doing it for me. And you can come along, because naturally we still are going to bring women of color, just bring people with it, right? We got a whole load we can take, but we're no longer like, oh my God, I don't know, Kamilah, how do you feel?
I think even and I'll just say, my parents are 73, right? So whole different time, whole different generation, different set of problems. even though therapy wasn't promoted, the term mental health wasn't talked about, we have survived through all of the historic trauma that we have gone through as a community in the best ways that we know how. So I think when we're hearing older people's like, man, yeah, something happened, but I had to, just get through it. That was a way for them to stay mentally sane, to be able to deal with all of the things that they were exposed to and things that happened to them with the lack of resources that we actually now have.
That's why people still bring food when someone passed away. That's handling a traumatic situation.
Grief is community. It's a way to kind of bring people together and soothe. One thing I want to say real quick though about boundaries, and I'm gonna come down here for a moment. Do you think that our boundaries always have to be verbally communicated?
Nope.
No? I don't know you, but I'm gonna get real close to you. So how do I know what her physical boundaries are? Mm-hmm. Right, she may lean back, she may start walking back a little bit. One of the things about boundaries is sometimes we can assume that everybody knows what our boundaries are. Why would they do that? Why would they say that? Why would they think that that's okay? Somebody else might have thought it was okay. In certain cultures, it's fine to get this close. When you're standing too far away, it's seen as being disrespectful. Boundaries also can change. She's a stranger to me, right? So the closer I get, if she does not know me, it's probably going to be a problem. But if I'm her partner, maybe a loved one, she may allow me to get a little closer. We're still talking about physical boundaries, right? But based on the relationship, based on the setting, things can change. So I think that's one of the things I would just say is that sometimes with boundaries, they don't always have to verbally be communicated. We can tell people what our boundaries are through nonverbal communication or by doing something different. Sydney? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. And that's what I was going to say. We don't have to react and respond to everything. Sometimes we can just feel like this person is doing this person's doing that. And I actually tell my clients that, well, my manager, emailed me at this time. Did she say that it needed a response? No, well, why would she email? Because that's her process. She may be a night owl, right? So unless it requires an immediate response, you can see it and then respond to it during your normal working hours. So part of it is also understanding that we have to be flexible, right? Life is not just about how we see things, how we think things should be going, but really just understanding that we all have our different processes that work for us, right? But we can say, if you're having concern, hey, Sydney, girl, I got your email Sunday at 3 p.m. Did you need me to respond to that, right? And then you can say, nope, Sundays is maybe my quiet time. That's when I do my best work. Absolutely not. I was not expecting you to respond to it. I just sent it when it popped up on my mind, right? So now we're not walking around with all of this resentfulness and anger, and we're creating this narrative and story that really is just something made up. There was a hand. Yes, ma'am.
Just bringing those two conversations together about destigmatization, and boundaries, and you use the word trauma too. So I think that Legina is right in the fact that we are breaking the barriers and the stigmas of mental health. But I think what also has to happen, because y'all talked about how we are as a people collectively, I think it's really coming up with that collective definition of what mental health is. So when we talk trauma, a lot of times when you use the
I think just having those safe conversations is part of it, right? Because sometimes we don't know what we don't know until we're in community with other people. It's like, wait a minute, girl, you feel the same way? You experience the same thing? Oh, okay, well, at least I know it's not me, right? It doesn't change it, but at least I can feel better that I'm not the only one, right? When we're dealing with things in isolation, whether it's perceived or actual, it makes it a lot difficult, right? So I think just having the conversations and that it's okay to talk about certain things. And everything I don't think is mental health. I think there's a lot of things that can impact our mental health and our general wellness and well-being, right?
And I think there's an opportunity for us to educate each other, because most of us wouldn't be here, just here, meaning physically present, if we hadn't been educated in an area of something that helped us overcome. So some people, like in the church, they say some of us may never see Jesus. The only Jesus we're going to see is the way we live. Some people may never see a therapist, but they're going to watch how you respond because you've been going to therapy, or you saying mental health and I'm mentally well, or I did self-care. So sometimes it's going to be you as the advocate. It's going to be you as the person who says, yeah, oh, you didn't like when she was that close to you? So that's the thing. So you have a physical boundary. So you can use those words, and then people are like, oh, I didn't know. Because a lot of people don't know. And although we say, therapy and resources are available, if you're not encouraged, especially on the workplace, if you're not encouraged to use EAP in HR, not all companies, but if you're not encouraged to do that or pursue that, a lot of people don't know. I work with clients all the time, and I do life coaching. But then I get to a point where, like I was telling Kamilah yesterday, I'm like, oh, that's bigger than you need. And I don't say it ugly. I'm saying it like this, just, you need therapy. And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. And it's because nobody has said to them, hey, have you considered that I had a client I talked to today, and we were first meeting. We're talking, and she realized she had middle child syndrome. So she realized she's been fighting with acceptance and all of these things. So in the middle of our call, she's crying. This is the first one. And she had never thought that her overachieving or her not feeling her worth came from not getting that in. So it's things like that where I'm like, oh, that may be some things you need to talk through. And I'm not saying I'm not the person, but I'm just saying people, when they have those revelations, we have to treat them with grace, but encourage them to go further. Encourage them to do the work, because that's the moment that they've been vulnerable to us. And God has put that in our place so we can educate, so we can say, you're not crazy. That ain't crazy. I did the same. I went through the same. Yeah, that's trauma. Listen, I have trauma. So we can have those conversations so that people do feel more comfortable. And when they feel more comfortable, they're able to do more and get along better.
I will just say this. I've worked with clients where whatever they're struggling with mentally is significantly impacting their ability to show up and perform and be productive in the workplace. And so sometimes we're having conversations about taking a leave of absence, maybe FMLA, so they can just kind of have that break. Most companies, if you have health benefits, you probably do have EAP, which is what Joye referenced, that stands for Employee Assistance Program. This is a free benefit that your employer has given to you, but they will pay for a certain amount of free sessions for you and your immediate family members. So typically that means the spouse and any children to be able to receive free therapy services. And I've seen them authorize anywhere from 3 sessions up to 10 sessions. You do not have to pay for this. Your employer pays for this. And the other thing is that your employer does not know that you are utilizing those services because it goes through a third party. So just kind of going back to boundaries, or maybe just people feeling comfortable to take care of their mental health in the workplace. A lot of times, depending on what it is, because I work with, high-level professionals, it's just like, I can't take a leave of absence talking about my anxiety, right? If I'm a pilot, if I'm a doctor, right? That might not be a good look for me. Or I've had some people, they're concerned if they take FMLA for more of an extended amount of time, let's say 6 weeks are gone, they may approve it because they can't necessarily deny it, right? But when I come back, am I going to get fired? Am I going to be looked at a certain kind of way? So there's still very much stigma in the workplace. So I would just say, if you are struggling, know who you're working for. Know who you are working for, right? What has the company's message culture been around wellness? Do they really promote a work-life balance, right? Do they encourage you to use your PTO? I know some people, it's just like, no, you cannot stack these your hours, right, you need to use a certain amount of time. Businesses will also close down for a certain amount of time as well. So I've seen that maybe like the last 2 weeks of December, sometimes businesses close, and that's paid time off for their employers. So if you are struggling, I'm not just gonna be like, yep, just go around and tell everybody this is what you're struggling with. No, because workplace toxicity. Know who you're working for. See if there is a confidant that you have, right, to safely be able to talk about what it is that you're experiencing and how it's impacting your performance. But EAP is through a third party, right? So that is at least one way you know that you can get help free of service without your employer knowing what's going on. So as we kind of wrap up, what are some tips? Tips that we can give the audience on how to be a little firmer in either it's our workplace boundaries or our professional self-care. What are some tips that you all would give?
Set a timer and take your lunch. It's labeled lunch, but take your nap, take your walk, get your laundry, don't leave it in the washer, put it in the dryer. Set a timer. So that time that you're supposed to be away from your work in whatever manner, you have it set and you start it when you clock out, and you have it finished in enough time to where you still have 5 minutes to get back to your desk and you're not rushing. Don't set it right on the minute, because then you get anxiety that, oh, I'm not close enough to my computer to wiggle the mouse. Set yourself a timer and be okay with the time that you're supposed to be away from work.
I know in Microsoft Teams, especially after COVID, they start building in a lot of virtual commutes. And for me, that has been a great thing to kind of set it on virtual commute time. It'll start shutting down your team. So I'll be deep in and like, oh, it's time to go home. So it'll say time for your virtual commute, and you can do like a wellness breathe or something like that in there. It also has a blockout focus time, so a do not disturb, and you can just go in. It's like happy. You just clicking on. It's like, we see you have 2 hours free here and 3 hours. I was like, oh wait, when am I gonna work? Let me take some of that back. But it has a lot of those things easier for you to click in there and see how much free time you can give yourself, because you're giving them 100% of you. When are you giving you 100% of you? So make sure you're able to use their systems, and don't wiggle your mouse when it's on do not disturb. Make sure it's all the way not disturbed.
And then to piggyback off of what DJ said, one of the things that I've told my husband and I tell the women that I work with is put in time for certain things. So not just set your timer, but then say, I'm going to take lunch every day or this week from this time to this time. Put that on your calendar, especially if you're in the workplace, because guess what? If your time is already booked, they can't put a time on there. A lot of times we're frustrated, like they just put a time on. Well, listen, you had space open. And you tell people, go on my calendar and put something on there. Well, guess what they did? So they didn't know that you wanted to eat at 12:30. They didn't know. So when you get up with your day, as you start to plan your day, plan your breaks. Put them on your calendar so that they're already blocked off. So then that way, as you go through the day, you don't have to worry about your lunch. It's already on there. Now, you can't be shifty and start moving it a lot, but you can say, I'm going to go to lunch at from 12:30 to 1:30. I'm going to go to lunch this week. Once you put that on there, you're already there. So nobody can take their time, and then you don't owe an explanation. So people say, oh, I wanted to schedule something with you. I saw you had, oh, yeah, I'm blocked. That's it. We feel like we have to explain. You don't.
No is a full sentence.
And that's it. So block your time and do it daily. You don't have to make it a big deal that you got to do it all week. But today, when you wake up, look at your calendar, look at your time, and building. I do it. I go pick up my kids from school, so I can't take clients between 3 and 4 because I pick up my kids. So I block that off so that nobody can be. And then if they want that time, they have to ask for it, and then that gives me the ability to choose.
Okay. So I want to be able to just hear from the audience and just open this up for a few more moments for any questions that you all may have about boundaries in the workplace, self-care, and how you can just make sure that you're taking care of yourselves. Alexis?
bunch of kids.
And I have a 15-year-old, 12-year-old, and a 2-year-old. My 15-year-old is on the spectrum. So my 15-year-old and my 2-year-old need me all the time. It's a great sandwich. So those timers are not just for work. Mommy needs this time for this, or this is dinner time. And your family, especially having a child on the spectrum, I know what works in your home might look insane. My family, they don't really, they're like, this is very different. Why can't you just move it? Because this is the scheduling my child needs and I need to be able to reset and have everything to work for everyone. So setting a time for, they know this is when mommy's available to do this. This is when I can play with you. This is when I will give you time to be in my face. So that is a necessity, also setting that. And then for especially my child on the spectrum, we have a visual also. We write the schedule out on this visual, and it's on a dry erase, but we use permanent markers so they don't wipe it off. But that really helps for them to help us to stay on that schedule as well.
Sydney?
I would just say outsource to like Instacart, so you're not at the grocery store. I actually get or like
Yeah, I do that. I have time for that.
it's like getting help because a lot of times we're afraid somebody asks for help. So I have one, it's not like having three, but I try to outsource as much as I can.
I would say focus on what really is important for your family and stay focused on that, because day to day is going to change. Your kids' needs are going to change. And so what really is important, but also how can you carve out that time for yourself? I'm not sure if it was DJ, but I remember when I was small, it's 3 of us, parents working long hours. And as soon as my mom came home, we're like, mommy, I need you this, I need. And she was like, and so one time my dad sat us down and was like, okay, y'all, when mommy comes home, she's going to go to her room. And when she comes out, then that is your time to engage about whatever you need her to sign for your class project or whatever it is, right? So we're talking about boundaries with parents, and we don't know, right? As far as I know, it's my mom and I have unlimited access to you, right? What do you mean no? But that was a way, right, for her to be able to have that transition time, wind down from her long 8-9 hour workday, sitting in traffic for another hour to then come home to a husband and some kids, right? And so sometimes I think it's about communicating what it is that you really need.
And that what is important to you thing is really big. Your home is your home, and for me, giving the time to my kids, doing the homework and sitting down, so if you come into my house, there will be dishes in my sink. And if they bother you, I welcome you to wash them.
And then finally, I would say, give yourself grace. We feel like we're failing if something is not done or completed. If a child, I remember when I have 9-year-old twin girls, and I remember their pediatrician said, they're not going to be axe murderers if you let them cry. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm a horrible mom because I'm letting them cry. So just give yourself grace, because ain't nobody soothing you when you cry. You got to take a break too. So sometimes it's just a matter of saying, you know what, I'm doing the best I can with the 3 children, the 2 children, the 1 children, and I'm doing the best. God, the parts that I'm missing, I thank you that you're going to fill in the gaps, because I'm not going to get it all right. And I'm okay with that. So giving ourselves permission to be the best moms we can, but knowing that we're still not going to get it all right. And be okay with that. And be like, I did the best I could today. Listen, everybody had on shoes. Everybody got out the house. I mean, seriously, we don't take those things. We take those things for granted. Like, everybody has their teeth brushed. So what? We're late. We all are here. Everybody in the car is safe. We made it. We did it.
That's
and so
the thing.
apply those things.
Saying, the shoes don't match, but they both fit. We fine. The pants don't match the shirt. They're fully dressed and it's clean. You pick your battles and just do what is best for you and your children. Like, nobody else can tell you, because mom, dad, neighbor, best friend, teacher, everybody has an opinion on how you're doing your children, how you're decorating your home, how you're feeding your kids. My kids are fed. Period.
Yes,
Period.
ma'am.
My question is, I am a suicide survivor of my youngest child. My question is, because my daughter was married, men generally don't understand when it comes to depression and suicide. They may experience it, but they're less emotional. So my daughter's husband really didn't understand that. He thought nothing was wrong with her. And they married, and they truly were together for many years. She got married when she was 19, killed herself at 30. But her mother, not living
opening up boundaries, having uncomfortable conversations. Because if you can lay in bed next to me, you should be able to tell me that your soul is hurting because you miss your grandpa and those fishing trips. No, it's not happening, but that's what I'm saying. If he's not starting the conversation, you start it. You make it a safe place for him to say that he likes flip-flops and socks without going, that's tacky. Because a lot of times men aren't going to say certain things because they don't want us to reject them. Now, we already done accepted them in their little raggedy cross-color outfits. You know, we let them go 2 weeks without having a fresh fade. We're not tripping. But some men think, oh, if I'm not cleaned up, she's not going to like me. She's going to immediately stop. I've been with you 6 months. I'm immediately stopping because you forgot to get a haircut this week. But we need to make that, I'm just saying, we need to make that space available.
So I think that's a very layered question, and so I'm getting the signal we're at time, but if you come talk to me at my table, I can kind of give you some tips on that. So as we wrap up, if everybody can just let the audience know if they want to follow up with you, where to find you, your Instagram, Facebook, website, and any events that you may have coming up.
Okay, so thank you all so very much. This has been amazing. The quickest way to access me is you can act on Instagram, speaking of Joye, Joye, but you can also text the word vision to 33777. So if you text the word vision to 33777, you'll actually get my vision playbook, and then we can stay connected that way. So that's the easiest way.
For me, I'll be back here on Sunday speaking on the I'm My Child's Advocate panel at 3 p.m. downstairs. And you can just find me on LinkedIn if you'd like to continue to connect.
You can find me on Instagram at Melanated Vines. Or you can catch me after we get done here, and then I will help you find it. Yeah, or LinkedIn as well.
All right, so anyone who is interested in starting or looking for a new therapist or just want to engage and continue to have the conversation, you can definitely follow KBT Counseling on Instagram and Facebook. We also have a table downstairs on the first floor, so please be sure just to stop by our table. We'd be more than happy to sign you up on the spot for any consultations, or if you're ready to book that first intake appointment, or if you just have any questions. So thank you all so much for your participation, your engagement. And we're going to set some boundaries in the workplace.
I love it. Y'all give it up one more time. Boundaries in the workplace. Thank you, ladies. Stage left. I don't know which one is stage left, but there's steps right there. All right, y'all. How are you feeling after today? Yes, good. All right, this has been amazing. And this was only day one. We were out